Wonderful. Thank you very much. And we'll pivot for this afternoon and look at the database layer. Pretty much every company that has talked earlier today has data that resides in some form of database. Even streaming data, will often reside in some type of persistent storage database. And we have an expert panel today of 4 very innovative companies, and we'll spend some time looking at each of them and what particular projects that they work with and how they see the database part evolving of the Data 2.0 ecosystem. And what I would like to do is start off by introducing our panel and ask each of the panelists to briefly describe yourself and your company. If you'd like to go first, Andy.
Sure. I'm Andy Gross. I'm principal architect at Basho Technologies. Basho makes a distributed key-value style database called Riak. We also have Riak Search, which is a Solr-compatible distributed search engine. And increasingly, this year, we're working on the core foundation of all those products, something we call Riak Core, which is a generic distributed systems toolkit that enables both us and other people to build databases and other distributed systems.
Thanks, Andy. David.
I'm Damien Katz. I'm the creator of CouchDB and the CTO of Couchbase. Our product is a fast scale-out, low latency key value store, and right now we are marrying that with CouchDB, and so our 2.0 product that we are working on releasing this summer will be a very fast scale out CouchDB that you can deploy, that gives you the fast operational. So basically, it's to deal with the thundering hard problem and give them a very low latency, fast, high throughput experience. You can add new machines as your user experience grows, so it'll give you high elasticity. Extreme reliability, very friendly to ops, and very high performance is our goals. And one of the key features, one of the key differentiators of CouchDB and Couchbase is not only scaling up, but the ability to scale down. We recently released our beta for an SDK for iOS, Couchbase on iOS, so you can have it on your phone, replicate a data set for offline use, have applications that you use while you're disconnected from the network, and then synchronize those changes. So you can have shared applications where people can be disconnected from the network, have access to their data, change it, query it, and then synchronize. And then everybody's sharing their data, even if they don't have access to the network. So in a nutshell, that's what we do.
All right. My name is Roger Bodemer. I'm EVP of Products and Technology at 10gen, which is the company behind MongoDB. And MongoDB is a horizontally scalable, agile, and document-oriented database. So the innovation that we, like one of the key innovations that we have is besides being very low latency and high performance, we're also horizontally scalable. You also have a data model that enables developers very quickly to iterate through design and deploy large-scale applications.
And my name is Jason Monberg. I'm the VP of Product Management at MarkLogic. And I think we're actually the old company in this bunch, harking back to 2003. But we make a database specifically focused on unstructured information. So things like documents, things like text. And we have petabyte scale implementations. We're schemaless. We're real time. We let you do ad hoc queries. So those are a lot of the differentiations we talk about when we work with our customers. And we're really focused right now on 3 verticals: financial services, media, and government.
Thank you, Jason. And I'll try to help set the stage for the database ecosystem. And it is a complex one. And I'll start by talking, Andy, of if we look at Amazon Dynamo and the successors to that or derivatives to that, including Riak that your company Basho works with, as well as others that are kind of siblings of Riak, of Cassandra and Project Voldemort. If you can kind of distinguish where Riak sits in And what are like key projects that really are, different and special that your technology brings, so that if there's a startup here or an enterprise in the audience that says, hey, I'd really like to work with Andy and his company, what's kind of an ideal test business problem or test technology architecture that your technology solves?
Sure. As far as differentiating React from Dynamo, the Dynamo paper, React's added a bunch of extras that weren't specified in Dynamo, like the ability to do MapReduce jobs over all your data. It's also added the ability to establish lightweight relationships that we call links throughout your data. So you can, both of those are basically queryability improvements to get beyond the fact that not everything fits into a key value store model, although React and all those other projects are a key value store at heart. As far as use cases, we see really the sort of predictable low latency use case is the one we see the most. Comcast uses us for a very high throughput, low latency object store behind their Xfinity TV app and service. Yammer uses us to store user notifications for Yammer messages. So really, the people that have chosen us, one line we hear a lot is that React is very boring operationally, which is a good thing. It tends to just run. I've had operators of React clusters tell me that they forget it's even there. So the main differentiator for React is the operational simplicity that comes from the team at Basho, having worked at places like Akamai and working with other very large distributed systems, and a lot of hard lessons learned went into making the operational experience pretty smooth.
Cool. Thank you, Andy. So turning from that kind of low latency, predictable, where you have very high volumes of data, such as Comcast, to Damien, and starting with CouchDB and the document-oriented database that you've worked on, as well as with the colleagues that you've recently merged with from Membase. Give us a sense of what's really special about that combination of CouchDB and Memcached, and where you're seeing the customers such as AOL or Zigna or others that you'd want to mention that are applicable to people in the audience who may want to say, hey, I really want to work with Damien and the folks at his company.
Well, so far the technologies haven't been merged together. So, we have customers that are using both technologies. So Zynga is a big user of Membase. They have thousands of machines deployed out there. AOL is also another big Lighthouse customer. We have lots of ad networks that are using Membase. They really love the low latency and very predictable performance. And then with CouchDB, we have a number of large deployments. The BBC is one of the largest. They use the cross data center replication. They have 3 data centers of CouchDB servers, large clusters. They love the predictable nature of it. They love that that they can just kill a server at any time and restart it, and it just instantly restarts and isn't going to lose data. They love how durable and reliable it is. It's pretty much bulletproof. NASCAR.com runs on CouchDB. Turner Broadcasting now, all their new sites are going to be run on CouchDB. Ubuntu, CouchDB is now on every single install of Ubuntu, and it's core part of the Ubuntu One service. And that's, again, replication is the key part of that. So now you can have apps that are on your Ubuntu desktop that are using CouchDB, and you can replicate that up to the Ubuntu One service. You just basically sign up. You don't even need to know about CouchDB. Sign up with the Ubuntu One service. Your data replicates up to the cloud. Now you sync your work machine, your home PC, all your data is in sync. Eventually you'll be able to sync your phone and again, have all your data in sync. And they have over 2 million users that have used that service and 500,000 paying users. And that's in production today. and that's on over 10 million machines. And so again, we have tons of production deployments today, serious, millions of users, millions of requests, terabytes of data every day coming in and out of CouchDB and Membase.
Great. Thank you, Damon. And turning to Roger and 10gen and MongoDB, similar question of what do you see as the kind of real sweet spot of an application or applications that you say, hey, if you have this problem, that this is a really good fit. Not that it's exclusive to what 10gen and MongoDB is, but what's kind of really good use cases for 10gen and MongoDB?
Yeah, thanks. We get that question quite a bit, and it's very hard to answer, actually. What we've seen with MongoDB is that it's a product that is extremely popular with developers. We have over 120,000 downloads per month of our server. And what we see is a lot of companies like the ease of use of developing your application first. So what they do is they download Mongo, they get started. The dynamic schema enables them to iterate through their application very, very quickly. And so a lot of the success stories that we have with our customers are people who either were on a relational database or on some other platform, and literally were spending like weeks and sometimes months to take an application, create the next iteration of the application, deploy that, and so on and so forth. And in the web in general, like shortened times to market, are becoming more and more, important. So we're seeing a lot of companies who have used Mongo to slash the time to market, like very, very significantly. And so we have several, reference customers, like AL is actually also one of them, Shutterfly is one of them, IGN. And IGN is actually kind of an interesting example because they were facing this, time to market issue where it took them weeks, to get the application to market, and with Mongo they were able to compress that to, like daily and sometimes twice a day kind of cycles. So that's where we see a lot of success, and that goes across many different industries. So we have customers in the financial industry as well as in publishing, and basically anything that requires large amounts of data, low latency, interactive querying, and so on and so forth is a good fit for Mongo, and we see sort of equal uptake throughout that. There's one other place where we see a lot of success is in the machine-generated data. So people who have machines that generate massive amounts of data somehow need to aggregate that and maybe do a little bit of real-time analytics on it. That's another very, very good sweet spot case for us.
Thank you, Roger. And Jason, same question. And the sweet spot for MarkLogic and your XCML, and also kind of differentiating among the company's other panelists that have started with an open source based platform, where in the case of MarkLogic you have a purpose-built database with XCML, and where's kind of a sweet spot for companies like a Simon & Schuster, Pearson, or Boeing, what they said, hey, this is why we really want to work with MarkLogic and your XML based product?
Sure. So the thing that we see across almost all of our customers is relatively complex information. And so this means that it's hard to actually model it and put it into a relational database. And there's the joke that it's just an SMP, a simple matter of programming to get it into that database. But I think as some of the panelists have mentioned, that can actually take months, if not years. The results aren't always that great. The projects tend to fail. And so they're looking for better ways to work with that information. So complex, and then they need that flexibility around it. So they need to be able to iterate. Oftentimes they don't know what other information is going to be put into that database, and they can't just continually modify a really brittle schema. They have to have that flexibility. So a couple examples. JetBlue is a customer that has all of their repair manual documentation and processes inside of MarkLogic, so that a mechanic can pull up the right information when they're looking at a specific part. And the thing about airplanes is that they might pull out one motor that's going to adjust the flap and replace it with a totally different model. So these are basically dynamic documents that we're managing and interacting with, and they'll put notes in there, things like that. And it's very complex. You can't just put that into a relational database. You also can't put that into a traditional CMS system. Another example is social media. So all of the Twitter feeds, all of the Facebook stuff, we have, well, particularly on the government side, we have a lot of three-letter agencies that are doing pretty intense analysis of that information, and it's basically text that they're working with. But if you go into some of the more public examples of how it's being used, a company like Explana is collecting comments about coursework that students are using, and then they're feeding that back to students so they can get a really great view of what other students think about particular courseware. And so there we have a combination of social media and the courseware, and they can basically drive great content to students very rapidly. And then you had mentioned open source, and I'm not sure if you wanted to take the question there, but I think MarkLogic is the only closed source product up here, and there are definitely some advantages and disadvantages. The advantages is that when working with customers, they know where the code has been. So when we work with the government, that actually becomes kind of important. No one else has touched the code. But certainly it's a different model in terms of getting just your average developer familiar with our technology out there and using it. But we definitely see ourselves as part of this larger movement of modern databases that are out there.
Thank you, Jason. And I'd like to open the floor for questions. And as kind of we're getting the questions set up, in looking at kind of the spectrum here, and so we've gone from examples of Andy and Basho talking about companies like Comcast that have a lot of operational data that's just huge volumes, but it's not necessarily the most complex data, but it's just huge volumes of it, to Jason describing very complex social media data, or imagine all the parts of an airplane and finding the manuals for it for JetBlue. Where, for these type of range of use cases, where do you see the most common coexistence where relational databases? Are you working a lot with Hadoop and MapReduce? For the panel as a whole, where do you see yourself most often fitting into in a coexistence environment for a company like AOL, for example, that uses multiple of the companies here?
Sure. AOL is also using Riak Core in production, which is the sort of fiddly distributed systems bits that are really hard to get right. At AOL, they used Riak Core to make a formerly single-node system a multi-node distributed system in the Dynamo model. So there's sort of a coexistence story there, a cool one, I think, because it's taking another piece of Basho technology and making it easier for them to integrate Riak in with the rest of their services. A lot of the other, to be honest, a lot of the use cases we get are brand new greenfield projects where there's not as many coexistence concerns. But where they do exist, typically, if data needs to go out of Riak into a relational database, we have a post-commit hook feature for that. So, there's Riak options for integration, and there's scripts and import scripts out there. Riak is also a popular target to save the output of a long-running Hadoop job for low latency retrieval. So people will run, a Hadoop job across a huge body of data, produce a smaller amount of refined data, and then put that into Riak so it can be served up on a live site.
Other thoughts on coexistence environments?
Well, I would just add that I think we've all mentioned at least one customer that someone else is working with. So there's certainly coexistence from that perspective. That there is a set of companies that are looking for these solutions, and they're talking to all the players out there. I would add that we interact with SQL databases constantly. No surprise. That's where most of the truly valuable information is today, but that's shifting over into some of the platforms that we're providing. The other, the new one for us is Hadoop, and I wonder if Hadoop is becoming a commodity that's going to be simply, just another part of the data store, because you have to have it, because analytics are becoming more important. They want them built into the where the data is stored, instead of moving things around and creating separate systems.
You'd certainly see that with Teradata buying Astra Data and EMC buying Greenplum of moving toward both those Postgres SQL-based companies, but also integrating in Hadoop and MapReduce. Other thoughts on coexistence?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we're seeing more and more talk about people wanting to do deep analytics on CouchDB data, and Hadoop is basically the best tool for that. And people are wanting to know, well, how can we hook up Hadoop efficiently into CouchDB? And so I think that is basically the future. That light analytics or real-time analytics will be done, at least with CouchDB. And then when people want to do more deeper batch-driven analytics, Hadoop will be the platform to do that.
Yeah, in terms of coexistence, I mean, if I look at our customer base and the people that are using MongoDB, I would say there's sort of 3 types of customers. One type has, like it's a startup, so they're new and they think they're going to have petabytes of data, and so they already know that, or they already have decided that, a relational database is likely not going to work for them, and so they're looking for a NoSQL solution, and then, sometimes they end up, like with MongoDB. So that's one set of customers that we have. The next set of customers are people who have requirements around, many, many thousands of readers and writers, so where read and write scalability is important. But that's the next set, and they kind of fall into 2 categories. They may have a pain point, at this point in time and be moving, or, they may again be one of those startups that think that, they're going to build this next great platform out. But then the third category, and this is something that was very interesting for me. My background is Oracle and Apple. What was very interesting for me to see is that we're seeing a large number of enterprises who are moving, features and parts, out of a relational database, i.e. Oracle, to MongoDB. And the reason for that is kind of twofold. There are 2 reasons for that. One of them is they may have a pain point where essentially scalability and performance on Oracle is problematic, because, you can only scale vertically, mostly. So that's one reason why they may move this way, and the other reason is, quite frankly, because of cost involved. And so a lot of people have have a few terabytes or petabytes of data. The key point is that that may not be worth like $1 million to them, but maybe it's worth like $100,000 to them or so. And I think that the new platforms, NoSQL platforms that are out there, actually provide people to to have reasons to keep holding on to their data longer and do analytics on them, like that, again, may not warrant, like an Oracle Exadata machine, but will be fine on commodity hardware and, for example, MongoDB. So we're seeing a surprising number of people that are actually making the move based on those motivations.
Thank you, Roger. And do we have questions? Yes, sir.
As you look ahead into the future, say 5 to 7 years, and you think about all of the analysis and all of the scale that goes along with that, as more and more data goes into the cloud, as mobile gets more powerful 5 to 7 years from now and networks get a lot better 5 to 7 years from now, do you see a lot of the data that we're currently putting into the cloud coming back to mobile devices for certain types of analysis and analytics, whereas right now we're just throwing it into the cloud left and right? So I'm thinking there's a point in the future where we're actually going to start to take back part of our data, run it on our own devices, and I'm just curious what a couple of you guys might think about that.
To summarize the question, thank you. Putting data in the cloud, but there's also the parallel of in-database analytics, including the ability to do that on premise. And do you foresee 5 to 7 years from now some of that like a wave where things may be going from the cloud and coming back on premise, or if you want to put your crystal ball on?
Yeah.
Well, so you'd have to imagine a future where none of your computing devices have local storage. And we've already seen that with the Google Chrome OS and devices that they've shipped. And people who have those, they kind of get very frustrated as soon as they lose a network connection and the devices are useless. So I don't know if the networks in 5 years will be as ubiquitous and fast enough that we can completely forego local storage. It seems possible, but 5 years ago they were kind of predicting that would happen now, and it certainly hasn't happened now. And my personal prediction is that in 5 years that won't happen. We're still going to have local storage. We're still going to have local apps. And that's going to happen indefinitely.
Yeah, just think of it from a latency perspective, local storage versus storage, from network, like it's still, orders of magnitudes different. So you always have local storage, I think.
We have time for one last question. Yes, sir.
Expecting people to be developing on top of SQL databases. Are you seeing development tools that are helping people develop on top of non-SQL databases and these new devices? What are the best development tools you're seeing?
Yeah, people tend to ask about tooling all the time. At least in the case of Riak and probably in the case of CouchDB, we provide a well-behaved HTTP interface, so it becomes interacting with the database, at least using that interface, becomes a lot more like interacting with a web server. So there's no ORM and all that complicated, enterprise database layer stuff. It's stripped down a little bit.
Then the challenge becomes finding one of the dozens of client libraries out there, which one is actively maintained and is good. But yeah.
I guess what I was asking about was more in terms of designing and architecting a system. So the tools to help actually have a developer think through what changes when you're not developing against a SQL database, when you're developing against a non-SQL database.
So with MarkLogic, we're standards based on XML. And so there are a whole bunch of tools that we plug into. But what's been interesting is to see the XML people start talking about JSON. And we're seeing this kind of convergence where I can imagine all the tools that are out there today that work for XML are going to start working for JSON. I haven't been paying attention to it.
You mean like all the schema kind of things, having JSON equivalents?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm already starting to see a lot of that. I don't know that it's catching on yet, but I'm seeing a lot of RFCs for it.
Yeah.
I think tools in general, I think it's a really good question. I don't think there's, like a lot of it out there. It's still a little early for it, but I know, several vendors who have approached us, and I'm really assuming other people as well to take their technology stack and move it to, to the NoSQL database. So I think, right now, since there's not, too much around, but you'll see more and more, especially as these technologies get deployed in, larger enterprises, which have different set of requirements.
Wonderful. Please join me in thanking Jason, Roger, Damien, and Andy for an excellent panel.